bump into Coach Norvell after practice tomorrow. Maybe we're checking in on the status of guys like Dimitri Emmanuel, Darrell Jackson. You think, when it comes to these hardship waivers? I mean, we see Darrell out there every single day. We saw Big Meech at Pro Day participating, so maybe it'd be fair to ask for some clarity, at least in that regard. Do we know anything about Darrell? Him being at practice every day, I assume, kind of portends good news for his availability.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still operating under the assumption that he's going to get his waiver because, they didn't do this new law about this new thing they just passed where they're going to really crack down on him until after, he was already in the process. So I feel like that you'd like to think he's fine because of that. Plus, even if the new rules were applied, I think he'd probably be in pretty good shape because I think he's got a documented case where his mother is really ill and she lives near here. And I think what they were doing in the last couple of years was just kind of basically anytime any player wanted to go into the portal, they were giving them the waiver. Everything I've heard is they don't have a decision on either one yet, I think. But again, with those things with the NCAA, you have no idea. It's not like they give you a status. It's not like when you order a pizza and they're like, okay, it's in the oven and it's going to be on the counter in 6 minutes. And okay, now it's ready. And literally you just find out when you find out. And so I don't think that there's any definitive timeline. And we, I tweeted about it and I think we posted on the message boards, but with the Dimitri Emmanuel, he did participate in Pro Day kind of like as a, just in case kind of thing, like in case he doesn't get the waiver. Now, at least the NFL scouts have seen him and you got fired up watching Dimitri Emmanuel run through those drills. So I think that's a good sign for him if he does come back, right?
Yeah, I mean, to my amateur eye, I thought he moved the best out of some of the bigger guys that were out there running through those drills. So I was like, wow. I mean, apples to apples, like I thought he looked a little bit more fluid than Dylan did. But again, not a scout, everybody, just one man's observation about things.
You looked like a proud papa every time Big Meech ran through a route. You were giving him a little fist pump.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine like how much anxiety he has to be going through because, all right, like, these guys are in Arizona and they're in Atlanta and they're all at all these high-end Division I performance facilities that are focusing on nothing but broad jump, 40 times, all these sort of things. And then you're kind of, in limbo and you're like, all right, well, let me go out in front of all these 32 teams and important persons from all these programs, these franchises, and try to perform. Like, that's very unenviable. You wish the NCAA could give them some clarity. Feel bad, NCAA, give them the waiver.
And it's cool again, it speaks to him and his relationship with Coach Atkins and his team that he wants to, because, and I don't know if do they still do supplemental drafts? Like, I don't know exactly how it would play out. If it goes past a certain point, but he could easily just walk away, and say, you know what, I'd love to be here, but if I don't know for sure, let me go ahead and start my life. Because I think he's got a chance. He may be able to play in the NFL. He can play multiple positions. He's played guard and tackle, and he's also really smart, good team leader, good teammate. He's got some really nice mobility for his size. So I think it's cool that he wants to be here.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anything on whether or not there's a supplemental draft. There are compensatory picks that are added to the draft. So
they used to have the supplemental draft. But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I remember the kid from LSU, like he'd gotten in trouble, like Lael Collins ended up with the Cowboys. They picked him in the supplemental draft. I remember that, but that's the last guy I can remember. So anywho, moving along. Carol reminded me I need to get a touch of Sam Spiegelman and try to get him on the podcast and then maybe do a little breakout video. It is April, which is 1 month closer to May, and maybe Destyn Hill will be here in May. How have you handled that, Ira? I mean, I know you kind of you're very diplomatic. You've got a very seasoned eye when these things sort of happen. To me, it's bizarre. I mean, just the fact that, like, I assume he hasn't played any kind of organized high-level football in forever, and now this team is completely different than where they were when he committed. Like, do you need to take a guy that's got 2 years of maybe ring rust on him? But if he has like true burner speed, maybe that's the one kind of thing you don't have on you. Not that you're slow or anything, but like, maybe it's just worth it to take a flyer on a guy like that. But it just seems like, with the numbers, it'd be kind of a little bit of an interesting, dubious move. But, Mike Norvell's got equity. He can do what he wants.
Yeah, no, we've all been kind of just not really paying too close of attention to this because of, over the last 2 years, it's not just that he didn't make it, but we were told he might make it in that fall Then we were told he might make it in the fall of 2021. Then he might make it in by January. Then, oh, well, no, maybe by next summer or the next year. And so at that point, you're like, okay, if this kid ever shows up, great. And that's kind of still where I'm at a little bit. But Michael actually, as you mentioned, Sam Spiegelman from On3 reported about a month ago that he was going to be here in May. Michael we just posted something on the premium recruiting board the other day from the weekend where Michael talked to somebody else at FSU who said that they're expecting him here on May 13th. They actually gave him the date. They think he'll be here by May 13th. And I looked up the calendar, and the summer classes begin on May 15th. So that would put him, in position to attend summer classes. And, I don't know. I mean, like you said, the program's in a different place. When he signed, he was the number one signee of that class. I mean, that was, those were dark days. I mean, not to put him down, but, you weren't bringing in a ton of 4-star blue chip kind of players. And he was one of them. And David Johnson, Florida State's recruiting coordinator, running backs coach, is from New Orleans. And that was kind of how the ties that he had there to Edna Carr. And they, that high school's, put out a lot of great players. And so that seemed to be a big coup. So from that standpoint, even if he's not a guy that could contribute in 2023, I still think he's a good take because he did have a lot of talent. And because that is a school you'd love to have connections with. I think they had players here this past weekend. They put out a lot of really good college football players. So, if he's a guy from that school and has success here, and they've stood by him for 2 years during this situation, and now he arrives and they stand by him and he plays well, then I think it's only good for Florida State. And then maybe, I wouldn't expect him to be a huge contributor this year, but maybe, because of how good they are at receiver, but some of those guys are going to be gone after this year.
I was trying to pull up the list from that year. On3 had him as the number 2 prospect from that signing class. It's crazy that they got Coop there. Year. Yeah, they got Peyton just ahead of him, and Malik McLean was part of that signing class.
I think that might have been our former company, our former alliance may have had Destyn Hill as the top one, but yeah, I mean he's a really nice player, and I don't think they desperately need wide receiver help, but certainly could probably use him next year. Gene asks, do we feel a little better about the kicking yet? Hate to lose a game this year. We could have won with a kick. So updating on the kickers, John Papucha said that last week he was really high in there last week. Both Ryan Fitzgerald and Tyler Keltner, I think he said, other than the one block, which sounded like he was more on protection than on the kickers, that he said they didn't miss any kicks during live competition last week. They did miss some kicks in the scrimmage from what we've heard. So they didn't cap off the week really good. You'd like to see them make those in the scrimmage itself. But so, yeah, I mean, I think I don't know that we're feeling a whole lot better about kicker than we do coming into the spring. Do you? I mean, I think it's still a question mark. I mean, it would have been great if either Ryan just completely dusted the challenger or Tyler Keltner, who transferred in, just completely blew the doors off. But I don't think that's happened that we've seen to this point.
I think, Corey said it pretty well, I think, on the podcast about, if you're looking for like a silver lining to this, and I totally agree with what you're saying, you would hope that one of these guys would have pulled away from the other. Not because the other guy was slumping, but you just hope the other guy was being that much more automatic. It feels like they had no other choice last year than Ryan Fitzgerald, right? And it was either Ryan Fitzgerald or go for it. Don't kick extra points against Wake Forest and stuff like that. I mean, it was that bad. I mean, folks, like against Wake Forest, like they were mounting a comeback. They couldn't rely on their kicker to kick an extra point. They were going for 2 points in that situation. I do feel whoever wins this competition, like if they miss a kick or two against LSU, you don't feel good about having to go to a backup, but like that's something they actually have now in their back pocket, right? Like last year it was walk-ons, and I know he's a preferred walk-on, but that's a little bit higher up on the food chain, if you will. So whoever wins it, it will be the best man, obviously, because they track everything. And if they slump, then you feel like, well, they can at least bring somebody else in who might be capable. So that's something they didn't have last year. They do have this year.